We're live.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello. So you went to tell me what you just the call that you just were on before
I
this.
just I just hopped on a call with Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who is the original Cassandra. I mean, she published her book Strong Men in 2016, and I, I forget I forget the subtitle. It was like I think it was from Mussolini to Trump or something, but
Mhm.
anyway, it was strongmen, and Trump was definitely included in the sort of legacy of strongmen. And she got reamed for it. There's a notorious, in my book, New York Times book review where they just take her to task for overstating the case and how could she put Trump in the same category as Gaddafi and Orban and Putin. So she has
Oh
been,
my God, I did not realize that history because I know that you've been following her for a while, but I missed all that. Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
Now
and
I'm caught
she,
up.
yes.
So,
So she has been, she's, a sort of a public intellectual in the best sense.
mm,
She teaches
mhm.
history at NYU, specialty in Italian fascism, but
Mm.
really in authoritarian
Well, no wonder
regimes.
she recognized what was going on.
Exactly. I was going to say authoritarian regimes around the world. So she was one of the earliest, to say like what is happening here is something that has
Yeah.
happened before and or is still happening other places that we don't even, talk about in the same breath as ourselves. But guess what? The patterns, the playbook are the same because these guys learn from each other, right? And I mean,
And
yeah.
and what is it? So are you on, does she have like a Substack or what
She
is
has a
the kind of
Substack, and if you are a paid subscriber to her Substack, then you get an invitation to join her weekly calls. They're generally
Okay, so
every
this was
Friday.
the
And this
weekly
is the
call
weekly
that she,
call,
okay.
and sometimes it's, just us chickens. And I mean, us chickens are now around 500 to 600 people on the call. And sometimes there's a guest. And so today we
Mhm.
had Eric Lipton, three-time Pulitzer Prize winner from the New York Times. I mean, you know, impressive. Sylvia Plath only had one posthumously, so. um, but yeah, I mean, Eric Lipton, I'd heard the name before. I think you had too. He's done a lot on Trump's financial connections, corruption, I guess would be the right
Yeah.
word. And this brings me to one of my big beefs of this week, which is, with the Epstein affair, Trumpstein, as I like to call it. To me, this is like the perfect opportunity to bring together like patriarchy, misogyny, abuse of women and girls in our society, and the rampant corruption of our
Yes.
government. And
Yes. Yes.
instead, what I see, and please tell me I'm wrong, please tell me you've seen more of this, more bringing it together under one roof. But what I see is it splitting apart, where the feminists are like, this is about women and girls, this is about abuse.
Mhm.
And then other people, and I even heard on some podcasts that I love and respect, people sort of saying, it's not only about the sex trafficking, it's also about important issues like money. And I'm just like, I think not only are both at least equally important, they're intertwined. They're part, you cannot
Yeah.
extricate. And it's been very frustrating for me, a very frustrating week. And I think certainly it's tempting to say, well, this is part of the plan. They're just kind of giving us a tranche here and a tranche there, drip, drip, drip. And this is making it harder for people to see the big picture. But frankly, I think
Mm.
it's more than that. I think it's quite symptomatic of what's been happening all of these years that Trump,
Have you done, so I just was really quick, have
mm,
you gone into those files at all?
no, I have
Have
not.
you like no,
I have
I
not.
haven't
And
either.
so I have to
I've
admit
just
that
been taking the bits.
exactly. I'm reliant on these third parties to sort of parse it for me. And that's a huge challenge. And I think the Pod Save America
Mhm.
boys talked about this. Sorry for calling them boys, but I do call them boys. That,
We
it's
call them
really,
the boys too.
it's hard to separate the wheat from the chaff. It's a big challenge
Yeah,
because there's obviously a lot of misinformation flying around,
yeah,
and also just bits and pieces like, oh, what did Woody Allen say? What did Soon Yi say?
yeah. There's a
Um,
lot of gossip.
lot of goss, and that again, that takes us away from the big picture. But on the other hand, speaking of as someone who does kind of like gossip, I mean, I don't really see a contradiction there necessarily
I
to
don't either.
getting a big
I don't
picture.
see I don't see a contradiction at all because I think that what this is, uh, I think that what this reveals is that these networks of elite, you know, patronage, I guess, that like it feels a little bit, of course, it feels a little bit like gossip. If you're talking about, royal families, various royal families in Europe, and you kind of know that like probably the Queen of Norway probably wasn't actually, I don't really know the extent to which she was involved or whatever. But it just kind of shows how extremely dirty the very, very top layer of society is. And the thing is that I think that Epstein was one node of this, but I don't think he's the only node. I think there's many, many fixers at that upper echelon as
Mhm.
people sort of spin out of reality that are offering favors. I mean, obviously he was a big dog. Obviously he was very, very close to the top and got away with like
He
a lot
seemed
of
like a
things.
spider
But
in the center of a big web.
exactly. But there's also something structural in it. And I do think like when people are like, "Oh, well, we've never seen this before, like this kind of abuse from like powerful people." And it's like this is actually very, very common in a lot of different, it could be authoritarian or what like a lot of different systems of patronage and power and stuff that sex work and the enslavement of young of children that sort of runs, and I don't know what it is. There's some psychology to it. There literally is. I mean, whatever. I mean, there's abuse of women and girls and children all throughout all of society, so it's not just at that level. But I just feel like there is like the gossip is revealing something
Hmm.
about there's this mask of like, oh, well, here's this wonderful J.K. Rowling. All these years she's been this, kind of goody two-shoes liberal until her turfism really got going in 2018 or 2019. Well, and this is around the time she's hanging out with Woody Allen and Soon Yi and maybe not Jeffrey Epstein. It seems sort of like she was in direct contact with him. I don't know. I haven't really figured it out yet. But like, I just think like I don't know, I'm not really making a point here. It's just like the way that it has been coming at me is it, it's so much. It's such an ocean of
Deluge.
horrible, horrible information. Horrible, horrible information. It's a diary
The
of someone.
flood
There's
of shit. Yes.
possible murders. There's multiple, missing people. There's probably faked suicides. Then there's the whole thing if he even committed suicide. So, but it's just like you get this feeling of it destabilizes the image of all of these people.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
and that is sort of I think that's kind of we're all kind of like feeling this kind of destabilization, which to me very much reminds me of Me Too. And the way that I experienced Me Too, which was a complete destabilization where it was as if everything shifted and I could see that so many structures, so many institutions in the whole
Hmm.
world were just completely shaped around the abuse of young women.
Yes.
And I mean, children were not as much a part of Me Too, but that was very much, I mean, it was here in Sweden, it was like all over in the US. And people, I mean, people that I know interned for Lauren Stein and who all of a sudden pops up again in the Epstein files asking for help when he ends up on the shitty media men list. I mean, these things are all so I really feel this week has been it doesn't have that feeling of like righteous anger that Me Too had, but
Hmm.
it has that like destabilizing feeling in some way that I feel like something has to bubble up from this, I don't know, this flood of information, don't you think?
I would have thought so, and that's why I'm feeling a bit disoriented and because you would think this has to have some consequences, has to have some accountability. I mean, at least with Me Too, we got what did we get? Harvey Weinstein and a couple of people disappeared for 5 minutes, and that's about it. But um yeah, I'm thinking about what you said. Why do you think it was so destabilizing? Because in a way, didn't we already know a lot of this? Slash, isn't this just, I guess that's the question. Maybe until this week, we could have thought, yeah, there's a slippery slope theory of, Me Too leads to this level of depravity and corruption. But there's also no, 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 there's still a red line that's some people, most decent people, are not going to cross. And so now we have names of people that we know are truly indecent. Some of them we knew before, though. I mean, we knew Woody Allen, we knew Noam Chomsky.
Yeah.
A lot of them are women, and I've been thinking about this as well. What's with the women? So, I
Yes,
mean,
this is
is
why
it
I bring up J.K. Rowling.
yes? And is it? I
And
did.
also
I
the
do
other,
have to throw out here are because back to your question, did I look at the files myself? No, I didn't. So I don't have like some kind of statistical breakdown. I did ask myself if the women are getting more attention than is really warranted because it's so jarring that there are
yeah.
women that we didn't expect this. Are they really getting are the men getting as much of the blowback as they should, or is it just, well, we knew that already, so this is surprising, this is new, this is a twist, there are a lot of women in there. I don't know if people are cherry picking the women, or if this is something that is really worthy of note, but I guess that was one of the surprises.
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult because definitely like in the Me Too era, one of the like big sort of personal insights I had was just even in my own psyche that there is a feeling of righteous anger towards women that feels good
Yeah,
and often righteous anger towards men actually feels bad and that in some way that we're socialized to empathy, like
100%.
going back to that Trump 1.0, but I feel I have felt a complication towards that, I feel like, as time has gone on, because I feel like um, they have been, these women have been so, so key
Mhm.
to what happened. And there is a way in which, like, there's something about the person who first pulls you in, who pretends to be nice, that is just extremely there is a special kind of evil for it that I think deserves its time. And
Absolutely.
a lot of these men, we knew their names. Like you said, we knew Dershowitz, we knew Allen, we knew. I think they're kind of releasing the names we know. That's the other thing. I think that
Hmm.
they're releasing the male names we know
Hmm.
and they're not releasing and like very like there's so much that's redacted. Um,
We knew Bill
so
Gates.
maybe,
We didn't know the antibiotics story, but we knew Bill
ooh,
Gates. Yeah,
oh my God. Oh God. No,
truly.
exactly. And because he's also considered a liberal. So I mean, obviously this
Mhm.
has been massaged in various ways. But I think it's worth having some time to have some righteous anger with these women whose names we didn't know. Because I do think that there is no amount of anger that could equal what they did. Like
Okay,
it's so,
100%. Don't misunderstand me at all to be
but I
defending them
will
in
say,
any way. But I guess to get back to your insight, which I find fascinating, that it feels kind of good to be mad at mommy, and it feels really scary to be mad at daddy. Um, what is that? How would you connect that to the destabilizing effect of this round? I mean, do you think?
I don't know if that, I think that it's more, to me, the destabilizing thing is, and this has happened to me a few times in my life, is
Mhm.
that there are times where, it happened with me too in like a very like like a social, it was a communal experience.
Hmm.
Um, but it's happened other times in my life where you are confronted with the depths of how much men hate women and how much the world hates women and how much the world hates girls. And when you take that in, I think, as a woman, like there is something just sort of destabilizing because you have to kind of go through your
Hmm.
life with the fiction. And I mean, there are many good men, blah, blah, we know that. But like,
Hashtag not
you
all
know,
men.
you, yeah, exactly. But like, you have to go through life with the fiction that things are relatively like
Yes, yes,
equal, or
and
else you can't live your
yes,
life.
yes. And one
And
name
and
for
in
that
many ways,
fiction,
in many ways they are.
one name for that fiction is institutions, right? We trust the institutions to filter. Yes, 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 it's not equal. Yes, yes, yes. But at the end of the day, there is something akin to meritocracy, fairness, justice, something along those lines, right? And sort of the key terms that you were mentioning before, like patronage, and those are all, they're supposed to run alongside the institutions. They're supposed
Hmm.
to be run through the institutions and somehow then filtered and flushed out of their pernicious influence, right? Yes, of course, if your superior likes you, they might write a slightly warmer letter of reference and so on. But at the end of the day, there will be enough people who know you that, will get to the truth of the matter about who really deserves to move on and who doesn't. And I think that's part of the destabilizing effect here is that we see so much of it was just pure subjectivity, and the
Hmm.
subjects were all men. And these women that we
Yes.
can absolutely be angry with, they're nevertheless hangers on, supplicants. They're just bowing to this authority that they're right-wing women, like Andrea Dworkin said. They've
Hmm.
made a certain calculation about how you get ahead in the world, and the way you
Hmm.
do it is you kiss male ass because they
Yeah.
have the power. And
Hmm.
that's not at all to excuse that, but it is a different order. um, and the men are also, in a way, and maybe this is also part of why it's more satisfying to be angry at the women, is, I mean, the men are kind of pathetic, actually, to like,
They are. They're very pathetic. And there is something a little bit like, the whole thing that this meme about Hunter Biden that's gone very viral about
yes,
Hunter Biden being, well, he's like kind of a real
kind of
man
wholesome,
because
wholesome rebel. Yeah.
he's a wholesome crack smoking
Yeah.
consenting
Barfly.
sex worker kind of, so it's like, there's a way in which like the men that are in these files and Epstein himself, they're very much, they give you the ick. Like it does, like it doesn't, it's not like this is about Obama, like it is, like it's not,
Right,
there's
they
not a
didn't have
surprise,
that
there's
far
not
to
like a
fall.
big.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of surprises as
Right,
far as the men's names who have been released,
right,
which, as we know, we can't trust that. There. I think it's becoming a little strange that we aren't getting new names.
right.
But
But, well, maybe, but maybe the circle wasn't really, I mean, it seems huge. I think the deep state radio crew made an interesting distinction, an important distinction. It's a very small number, it's a very small minority, but there are people from every field and every walk of life, except maybe somebody said not many journalists, but academia,
a lot of academics.
right. So, yeah, I mean, I think what makes them pathetic, actually, and what makes the women seem almost a little bit smarter by comparison, is that, you know, yeah, like I say, they looked at the field, they made an analysis, like it's in my interest to be nice to these men, whereas the men kind of high on their own supply. Like they believe their own bullshit. They believe that they are supermen. They believe that
I
they,
don't know. I think the women are pretty pathetic too,
well,
though,
that's
Teresa. I
true.
have to say
No, they
the
are.
idea of
You're
Sarah
right.
Ferguson, the idea, I mean, Sarah Ferguson, like she, I mean, could any, I mean, like I want to throw up in my mouth when I think of the information that's come out about her. It's like these are very trashy people. They're very
They are
trashy.
trash.
They're
They
very
are
trashy
absolute
people.
trash.
And and I think that, you know, I don't think there's so much of a difference with the women. And the other thing
Hmm.
I think is that it's pretty interesting that it's Ghislaine, or however you say her name. It's quite clear that she very actively participated in the sexual abuse as well.
Oh,
And you do
100%.
kind of
100%.
you do kind of wonder, like, were some of these women like
Yes.
also predators? Like, was
Hmm.
that sort of part of it? I don't think the thing that's strange to me is like I still am waiting for like the deep dive article in the New
Hmm.
Yorker that's like
Hmm.
in the year 1994, Epstein opened this modeling agency that gives us the real, that puts it together. This is
Yes.
where I feel so lost. I have been
Yes.
so
Yes.
dependent on making sense of the world from elite journalism
Hmm.
because of the kind of writing that you get in the New Yorker and the New York Times, like blah, blah, blah,
Yep.
you know, the 5 million places
Hmm.
that I have a subscription to. Those I've been so dependent, and the closest that we kind of have had is this woman. Is it Lori Brown or
Julie
this one
K.
down
Brown
in Florida,
from Julie K. Brown.
Julie K.
Yeah.
Brown.
Hmm.
But I'm still like, wait, where? And maybe it's that I haven't read like the book that explains this, and that book's kind of been. But it's like,
I
how
haven't
many
either.
people?
I haven't found it,
How
as you
many
said.
people are, how many people were trafficked?
Yeah.
Where were they trafficked to? Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, I'm still, it feels like there's so much information and so few very good storytellers, like the
And
kind of stories that
yes.
were told about Harvey Epstein. You know,
Yes.
like, where are those articles? Like, you know, where's a
Well, I told you where one
Ronan
of them
Farrow?
went was Vanity Fair quashed it, right? We had reporters on the beat, and they refused to publish it, citing.
I find the whole way this has been reported on in the New York Times, the New Yorker, all of
Mhm.
them, very weird. Very weird how
Could not
they've
agree
been
more.
reporting on
It's
it.
so
Why don't they
bizarre.
have, why isn't Ronan Farrow on this? Like,
Why? Why?
why aren't star journalists writing about this? It's
Maybe
just
he's
crazy.
been told
And,
he
you
has a
know,
conflict of interest because of his paternity.
oh, I didn't realize that. Well, okay,
I mean, no,
fine.
I'm
But
speculating. I'm remembering Me Too, where women were told that if they had ever been victims of sexual harassment, oh, okay, so 90% of women, they needed to be off the beat. And Me Too, because they
well, and
couldn't
I
be
think maybe
objective.
this is part of what's so destabilizing is that I
Hmm.
have it for so many years, I've felt like I I understand that the New York Times has its limitations. I understand that the New Yorker has its limitations. I understand that, you know, you have to bring in some of the Guardian and you have to bring in a little bit of drop site news and you have to bring in a little bit of Salon and Slate and blah blah and you kind of put it together. But somehow that usual package of journalism that helps me make
It's
sense
not
of the
doing it
world,
this time
it's
around.
just not,
Mm-mm.
it feels very absent.
Yes.
And I'm just like, the storytelling is not
Hmm.
there. That's what's missing.
And
And
that's what's
and I
destabilizing as well, right?
that's what's
Yeah.
destabilizing. I
Hmm.
think that's really what's destabilizing.
Hmm.
That and also just being reminded that women aren't considered human. Those two
Well,
things,
I think
very
those two things go
destabilizing.
together. I think that's the missing center. That's the
Yeah.
hole at the center of the story because they can't get a foothold in what is serious, what is real, what is vital to our world today. Oh, well, wait, can we get away from the women angle, from the chick lit? Can we like, get to the meat of it? And because the meat is like this gaping hole that is the lives and fates of women and children. And I mean, we've seen also the reactions of the survivors themselves, at least some of them, horror, right, at their betrayal. Um, And I think some of them, we know that not all of these survivors are, lefty liberals. A lot of
No.
them were depending on Trump slash Big Daddy to save them. And I mean,
Yeah.
so I think there's sort of two, it's on the one hand, maybe our own, even though, um, feminist and insightful as we are, we also unconsciously, subconsciously look for maybe not Trump, but we look for these liberal journalists to come and
Yes.
save us and speak truth to power, or at least
Hmm.
speak truth. And they're not there because they don't know how to give voice to
No.
these stories. Much,
Well,
but
and I think,
what's really shocking to me is that they can't, if you're at least going to, because Julie K. Brown as well has been saying from the beginning of her investigations, follow the money. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that angle. But
mm,
why is it so hard to connect the dots between following the money, like you say, the trafficking and the exploitation of the women and girls? That it seems like that should be pretty
yeah, and
straightforward.
I mean, I just like some of the things, uh, that some of the details just point to such a massive amount of um trafficking, like
Mm-hmm.
at such a such an insane level
Mm-hmm.
that I'm just like, you know, I don't know. I just I need someone to like put it together with the numbers and say
Yes.
like we
Yes.
think it was 10,000 girls. We think it was 1,000 girls. We think it was 400 girls. We
Mm-hmm.
think it was 200 girls. Like
Mm-hmm.
whatever what like uh, also all this mention like how credible is this stuff? There's also a lot of stuff we're young boys also
Mm-hmm.
being trafficked. It
Yes.
seems like there were. So how many of those were I mean like it feels like we're getting like the tiniest tip finger, and what we're getting is a lot of the people that we already knew and a few like sacrificial lambs. But also, this is just one email address that he had, and like some other stuff too. But like there were other homes that he had. There were other, I mean, there's just like, and in the meantime, Ghislaine sitting in the softest prison, no, answering her
Stroking a
email on
puppy.
her computer. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
stroking a puppy and puppy therapy. I mean, it's insane. That woman, it just, what does she has something over people. She has
Well,
to, and I do not.
I don't know a lot about it, but I know her father was someone who was also murdered, it seems, on his yacht that was named Ghislaine after his daughter. And he was very, very connected. He had a media
And he
empire.
was in intelligence or something, or no, or
Maybe, but definitely media in the UK. Very dirty, dirty guy. Um, anyway, we should get someone. I mean, but even that, why do we not all know all about that? Why don't we know
and
the
I will
whole
tell you what,
backstory?
I part of the reason I don't know is that I don't like to read things like
Okay, you know
this.
what? But that's a big
I
part of it.
really don't.
That's a big part of it. And I don't blame you
It
one
is.
bit. And
I have a
I
hard
don't love it
time.
either. It's not like I find this entertaining, but I definitely think that that's a huge part about why we don't have the big story is that people just find it, as you rightly said before, ick. And no one wants
It's
the ick.
icky.
No one
It's
wants to be,
icky. It's
it's
it
gross.
also seems it also kind of makes you sound a little crazy when you're talking about it. Like it's not of even though it's about polite society, it doesn't feel of polite society. It's just
Well,
like
but that's
it's
exactly what they're counting on, right?
yes.
Exactly what they're counting on. And they were right to do so. It worked for decades.
I
Decades.
keep decades, and I keep thinking about this. An old friend of mine, who was I don't know, like 15, 16 years older than me, but we were friends for many years. And he used to talk about when he was young in the 90s, and he always called them the sleazy 90s. He's like, "Oh, in the sleazy 90s." And there is something about the 90s that was really sleazy. And
Yes.
when you look at like when you look at like the way like that was the height of like the modeling agencies, the modeling worlds, like so much
100%.
of like this was built in that really sleazy libertine atmosphere of the
Mm-hmm.
90s.
Mm-hmm.
And there is just like it's just sleazy. It's just like it's gross. But you're right. It's like if they're not going to figure it out, like citizen journalists have to make, I mean, I do think like you have, I mean, us talking like this, why are we doing it? Because we think that obviously we have to take things into our own hands at a certain point because things are falling apart, you know? I mean, as we've seen with the Washington Post this week, it's like it's fewer and fewer um verifiable institutions. I mean,
Yes.
everything feels like it's crumbling. Everything feels like you have,
Yes. And I can
run off
understand.
a cliff and you're running in the air. That's what
Yes.
it feels like.
And I
That's
can
what it feels
understand why the reaction of some professions and professionals is to double down on professional standards and to not want to speculate and not want to get out over their skis and to check all the boxes. I mean, I think Tim Snyder had something about this and on tyranny, like adhering to professional standards is part of resistance in a way because you don't want them to succeed in eroding all of those standards that we rely on. But at the same time, um, if you're just over here checking all the boxes and meanwhile, Rome is burning and you're afraid to point to that because you don't have enough sources yet, which was, for example, the alleged reason that Vanity Fair didn't run its story years ago. I think it was 15, 20 years ago. They had, that's the
like.
other thing, the other part of the lacuna here in the center is that you have to convince these now women to go on the record and
Yeah.
risk their anonymity and at what I mean we all saw the Kavanaugh hearings, we all saw what happens
Yeah.
to women who come
Another
forward.
Epstein connection, apparently. Apparently he
Oh,
had a in
shocker.
that.
Yeah.
But it was so clear. Here's the thing is that I think subconsciously, and as we've talked about many, many times, the Trump movement is a pro-rape movement.
Yes.
And it's been explicit. I think it's been implicit from the beginning. I think it's been explicit from grab him by the pussy. And the choice, I remember at the time that they put Kavanaugh in, they had a long list of people that would have made the exact same decisions on the bench that we're not a
We're not as
sleazeball
gross. Yeah. We're not.
yeah, who didn't have multiple rumored harassment allegations. And
They preferred, yes,
they
100%.
purposely,
If they
and
have a choice, they'll choose the rapist for
they
sure.
wanted, yes,
They
it's a
want the rapist. They want
totally,
it in our face.
I,
This has been
and I think
so
that
hard for people to
And I do
accept.
think it is interesting to see that behind the scenes, obviously, Epstein played a role in that. Like that is
Well,
he,
even if it's only the role of marking out a certain territory of sort of like drawing the line, so far outside the lines of decency that you were like, well, as long as I'm on this side of it, I should be fine. At least I'm not
yeah.
Epstein. Um,
Well, okay. Another question though, again, to ask you to, isn't it crazy that like the Steve Bannon connections are still just sort of like again, just fodder for social media, and there's no serious journalism about the like that Bannon was Trump's best or not Trump, Epstein's best friend for like the last 2 years or plus. It's like, I'm just like, what couldn't they, isn't there an angle on that? I mean, there's so many emails back and forth. Couldn't someone report that in the New York Times? Like, one of the biggest MAGA influencers has there's a whole tranche of new knowledge about his like crazy. It's just
It's
and
just
Peter
because
Thiel.
they've already given up all pretense. Not only have they given up pretense, that's too mild to decency. They rub our faces in their indecency. And that's always been part of the point, which has been very difficult for Americans, I think, just to grok because it's so foreign to our way of thinking about public life. but they want us to see how obscene they are so that we
Yes.
know that they can get away with it and that they can get away with anything else that they try to do, such as, for example, I don't know, stealing elections, although I don't even like stealing. So my big thing is, let's call it
Yes,
sabotage.
let's talk about the
Yeah.
elections for a little
So
bit.
I say
Another
everybody's talking about rigging the elections or throwing the elections or stealing I say sabotage, because sabotage is a
Mhm.
crime and it's intentional and it's willful, but it's not necessarily going to be successful, right? It's just an attempt
Mhm.
to throw it, because I
Very
don't like
good. That's very
ceding him the
smart.
power beforehand, which I
That's
feel,
really smart.
right, because we both listened to Jamel Bowie.
Mhm.
We know about elections. We've both been involved, and I know your dad was what was
Yeah,
he?
he was a county clerk. He
A
ran the
county
local
clerk.
elections.
So we know how this works. We know that it's
Yes.
not federal.
I grew up around, I remember there was a vault in the county seat. You went down and all you could smell. I remember the smell of the ballots. It's like that was my childhood, staying late while they were, No.
Beautiful American
I
story. But yeah, we know he
yes, but
can't do it in any
ah,
real
sorry.
way, but he can throw shit at the wall and see what
Yes.
sticks. That's what he can do. And no
He can
one doubts
degrade.
that he will.
He degrades. He
Yes.
degrades constantly.
Everything he
And he
touches
sees how
dies.
far he can get.
Hmm.
And I mean, it was interesting because I listened to just enough of today's Pod Save America to like, I wanted to hear what they had to say about this election stuff because that's another thing that I feel like the New York Times has not really been very like why this should be the front page at National Prayer this is like the national prayer blah 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 that they have every year. I mean, that's
Hmm.
how this has been going on since like Eisenhower or whatever. It's a super famous event, and Trump chooses this moment to go on another one of his rants, but one of his worst rants about sabotaging the election. It's
Hmm.
like this should be bold, top of the page everywhere. And it's just like it's in one year, out the other with these people. And I'm just like, you can't, like, if you can't even react appropriately to this, like, I mean, I understand it is sad to lose the verification of journalism. But the way that these institutions have normalized Trump, sanitized Trump, uh, created created a false reality of normalcy that people who uh, have money can live inside of is like I have a deep anger about that. Like
Deep,
I'm
very
so
deep. It's
I looked at the
enraging.
front page. The only thing about the Epsteins on the front page was the Clintons, which whatever. F the Clintons, I don't care. They should just go talk about whatever they know. If they know something, go and say it. You guys should go say whatever you know. So I don't give any crap about what happens to the Clintons. But why are their names the only ones on the front page with Epstein? Why? That is like you are working from a muscle memory so deep, it's like freaking older than the dinosaurs. And
But
I'm like,
what is that muscle memory really? Because to me, it's two things. It's the constant foregrounding of Trump's agency. Trump is the only one who can act, who does things, who says things, who wants to do things, who intends to do things. The entire American electorate is just his foil. He can do to us whatever he wants. We have no agency. We have no say. And certainly the New York Times is not our voice. They are just there to broadcast whatever Trump wants to put out there. And, people say, oh, Trump is so savvy the way that he plays it. Well, it takes two to tango. I mean, they have
yeah,
been his willing partner. And even so now you're saying that, well, it was Clinton's name and not Trump's. But that's just the other side of the coin, right? If Clinton is there instead of Trump, it's like an adversarial system. It's someone is the agent and someone is the acted upon. And whenever it would make Trump look bad, then you choose someone else to take his place. I mean, it's just constant. And I think
Yeah.
there is a link to what we were saying before about Epstein. It's the way it's conceived and is in these terms, right? Like you cannot take the play, you cannot speak for or with the voice of the people who are being done unto, because that's somehow degrading also for you
Mhm.
as a journalist to take that position. And it's also a failure, though, to speak on behalf of the institutions. Like if you don't want to go all the way to speaking on behalf of the people, or, what about defending? This is, I think, the big shock for a lot of us, is that the institution of the media has not been an effective defender of the other institutions, right? Democracy dies in darkness, whatever, that was cute, but it wasn't really true. They weren't doing what the Ben Bradley
Mhm.
era did and speaking truth to power. They weren't really shining a light. And even that whole shining a light metaphor doesn't work anymore when, as we said before, they're rubbing it in your face. They're not hiding
Yeah.
anything. It's right there.
I mean, I just feel like that there is this way in which um they and this is what I don't understand. To what extent are they themselves living inside of the illusion? Because there's a way in which making the Epstein story about the Clintons on your front page and that being the only thing on the front
Mm-hmm.
page about Epstein, that is trying to return to a past that is long gone. That's what it feels to me. It almost is like a deep nostalgia. And it's like, and it's a like a desperate, like if we pretend things
Sure.
are normal, and because like you said, there is only one side with agency. There is not another side. Like, it's like
Mm-hmm.
this is Trump doing shit all the time. And then people have to react to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think like um it kind of, but again, it's like they're trying to create this illusion that I'm not sure was ever true of
Right.
this kind of bipartisan world where, and the Clintons were very handy for that because, as I could go on about all the, I have a deep seated anger at the Democratic Party. But for a very, very long time, the Republicans have been much more evil. They just have been more evil. Like we
There
all
still
know
is a
this. It's like a
difference.
cliche.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the Clintons were a really important tool for liberal media to say, "Hey, look, we're fair because we're hard on the Clintons."
Right.
And I think it was like that, it's like it gave them cover to think of themselves as fair, because if they were really to report on how egregious the Republican Party has been for a very long time, like it wouldn't seem, you couldn't live in this bipartisan fantasy. This like Watergate, it's a Watergate fantasy. And I remember like, I listened to that Rachel Maddow, she did a podcast about Spiro Agnew.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember this? I think
Bag
this was in
man.
Trump one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember listening to it and being really, I had didn't really know the story of Agnew very much before that. And I was really interested in it. And then we get to the end and he basically like, yeah, he got like a slap on the wrist. He got to retire and go home. And like he didn't like really, he had to give up being the vice president, but like he didn't really get very much in trouble. And the idea was, well, we're not going to get him really in trouble because like, okay, that would be destabilizing to the country because
Same
if he
logic
went to
as with the
jail,
party. Same logic as with the
exactly.
party.
But
Yeah.
this was the thing that really got me is that Rachel Maddow went on this long like beautiful like paean to American democracy, that oh my God, the fact that Spiro Agnew was taken down was a sign that the institutions work. And I was like, did you
Did
just hear the story you just told? Because
they?
the story you just told does not fit what you're saying now. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, the fact that Spiro Agnew got away with all of this and then Nixon really never really paid any price either, like, this is
Well,
how
as
we
you
got
said, Liz, it hurts
to
to
this
be
point.
mad at dad. It really, nope,
Yes.
nobody wants, so a little symbolic castration is all we need, and then we can proceed. right? But
Yes.
yes, I think you're right that, I think Trump looked at the Nixon era and said, why did he resign? He didn't have to
Yes.
resign. No one,
And isn't
what
this
were they going to do if he didn't resign? Oh, they were going to impeach. Let's have it. Let's have it, right? That was his lesson. So he took in a way the same lesson you did, just from the other side. And
from
that's
the other
why
side?
right. So you're absolutely right. It absolutely is nostalgia. All I'm saying is that it's gone so far that it's hard to believe. Like you say, like the question becomes, do they really believe this now? Or are they just
Yes, that's
going
the
through the
thing. Do they
motions?
believe it? It's just
Part
this is just the way they've always done it, so they do it this way.
Well,
It's
or the more
very
generous interpretation would be what I was saying before, that they're doubling down on their standards because they have nowhere else to go. They were not, and here we could definitely draw an analogy to the Democratic Party. These people were not. They did not plan on being revolutionaries or
no, they're,
radicals. That was not.
that's not who
It's
they
not
are.
why they went
That's not
into
what they're
this.
built for.
And
That was not the job they signed up
that
for.
was not what they said. No, and they're cutting, in their view, I can see how they would think that they're cutting out the ground from under their own feet if they attack the system. But you and I, as people who have seen for a long time that we need something like deep structural reform, are just banging
Yes.
our heads against the
Yeah.
wall. All right,
Yeah.
let's maybe pivot to some hopeful things. You said you had a hopeful
Yes.
story.
Hopeful thing. Okay, so here's my hopeful story. So I talked to my mom earlier tonight, and as you know, she was a high school English teacher, or maybe you didn't know that. I don't know. But my
I
mom was a
knew
high
that.
school English teacher in rural Nebraska for
Mm.
20 plus years. And she received a message on Facebook from an old classmate of mine. And she read it to me, and basically the classmate said, dear Mrs. Clark, I just like in these like terrible times, I just wanted to tell you that I am so thankful for the books that you made us read because they prepared me to be able to leave the Trump cult. And it must not have been easy to be a liberal teacher in our tiny town, but just know that those books are what helped me see through this terrible, this terrible man. And just like went on from there with like different
Wow.
things about, yeah,
That is
yeah.
beautiful on so many levels.
And she's an evangelical Christian
Hmm.
too. I know she is. And I don't think she's had a crisis in faith in that way. So
Wow.
hopeful.
Very, very hopeful. Well,
Yeah.
teachers are the unsung heroes for sure. And also how wonderful that she reached out and wrote the letter.
And it was a beautiful letter. I mean, I now have, botched it, but it was really, really sweet. And, I mean, she's my age, but, her kids are like almost 30, like, I mean, she had kids young
Hmm.
and as
Hmm.
many people that I went to high school with did. And it's just, I don't know, I just think it's really beautiful to think that, she's stayed a reader and that she remembered reading those books as like a lesson that she could fall back on when she felt that her morality, because I actually did see
Mm.
her post something on Facebook about it's this mass deportation stuff. I mean, I really think that there are people
Hmm.
in the Christian world who really actually do take their Christianity very seriously.
Seriously.
And as I've always said about the abortion stuff,
Hmm.
there are many people in the forced birther movement who are just completely full of shit. But many pro-lifers that I grew up with, girls my age, they really felt very, very strongly about it in a way that was very pure, very
Right.
pure.
And in a
So
way that then
I,
would also cause them to be outraged by the treatment of humans who have been born and live
yeah,
on this earth, and children who are being imprisoned, concentration camps. I was
yeah.
like, they're not going to like that. they're not going to be
No.
able to get behind that. Yeah. And that
So
also, I
I
mean,
found that
would you
pretty
say,
cool.
yeah, that's extremely cool. And I'm also very interested that it was, I mean, I would go too far with this, but that it was a woman. I mean, I do wonder, you've born children, you've raised children, you may really have a visceral reaction to seeing,
Yeah.
5-year-olds get locked up. And
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers absolutely reflect this. The American people are not behind this. There is no silent fucking majority that thinks this is great. Absolutely not. It's all a lie. I mean, that we can't say that often enough. I want to see who is going to stand
It's a
up
lie.
and defend this. It's no one. It's
Yeah.
a lie. It's a lie.
Yeah.
Stephen Miller and I don't
Yeah.
know, Steve
And
Bannon.
I have no idea. I have no idea at what point she left the cult. But she herself uh, says that she was in it in that letter to my mom at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's something very interesting about that, that like there are, because I've been very like, I have not believed it with this off-ramp stuff. It's like
Mm-hmm.
what's the old George Bush, fool me once, shame on you, fool me again, can't fool me, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't even remember. I'm like the George W. Bush of this. But I mean, like there is like a real like I have I have thought that they are going, and most of them will, like most of his cult,
Oh
they
yeah.
will go to the end.
Oh yeah.
But like just that some are coming over is very hopeful, and to see them coming over for such a moral reason, like
Yes.
not like, oh, because my pocketbook, like, because always they're like, well, they're going to be
That
because the
is
food
so
prices are.
reductive, and that is something that I will also absolutely ding the Democrats for, is this sort of reduction to of political subjects, citizens to, of course we care if we're poor,
Yes,
if we're broke, if we can't buy eggs,
yes,
whatever the fuck, of course. But we have dignity as well, and we are a
yes.
little tired of seeing it just get dragged through the mud, really by both sides, being so condescending and
That's the
belittling.
word. Yes, it's so
It's
condescending. It's so condescending. This like, well, you know, these ICE raids are making your grocery prices go up. It's like, ew, who the F
ew,
cares? Like,
right,
I'm
ew.
sorry, but that is not a compelling moral argument. Like, and I think that is kind of the code that needs to be cracked, that we've seen a little bit with Mom Donnie. We've maybe seen a little bit with
Mm-hmm.
AOC and other progressives that we love. But this thing of like speaking about people's material needs in a way that is dignified, but also not forgetting that people have a moral side as well, and they deserve to be addressed as serious people. As much as half the time I'm like, are you actually serious people? But still, like, I think that if you call
But
maybe to the
raise the
better,
bar. Exactly. You're supposed to be
raise the bar,
leaders. You're
lead,
supposed to be pointing
lead.
out what lead. You're
Oh
supposed to
my
be
God,
pointing
I
out what the
can't.
stakes are, and not ceding the field to those who
Yes.
would scapegoat people who have
No,
absolutely nothing to do with the price of
no.
tea. It's that's been very disappointing. They could take a lesson from that student that wrote your mother about, having a moral
Yes.
compass. And
Yes.
that's how it was supposed to work. Um, but that is very helpful, and we've had some other rays of hope in terms of electoral results this week, right?
Yes.
That does give me hope. And also the polls. I mean, this is all that some people care about, are like the hard numbers. But of course it is important. I think it's very clear what the American people are saying with their mouths, with their feet, with their whole bodies that they're putting on the line. And
Yeah.
there have been calls for general strikes. Some of it has started to happen. Even Ruben Gallego, I mean, he is hardly like, a lefty, and he's out here talking about general strike, right? I mean,
I will tell you what, and I've told you this before. Ruben Gallego is my favorite of the centrists. If we're going to have a centrist, I would want
give me
him.
one like him. Yeah.
Because I mean,
He
I'd
puts his
rather have
money
a
where his mouth
progressive.
is.
Yes, I would rather have a progressive, but all the way back to the first Trump election, I think that his style of communication is very direct. He
Mhm.
doesn't fall into these like dumb, weird games that people are playing with Jeffries is the worst of all of them.
Ugh.
He's actually sort of sounds like what he's saying is what he means. So if we have to have him, that's who I would want as far as a centrist. But I mean, now I'm into fantasy football with that
Well,
with
yeah,
2025.
Jeffries just definitely
Oh,
doesn't
we
belong in
didn't
our
even.
hopeful section, but of of our podcast. But I mean, the question is this voice going to be heard? How is it going to be heard? How is it going to make itself heard? And all we really have is elections.
Yeah.
And that's the big question on everybody's mind, right? Is are we gonna have them in such a way that um this just because also because you brought up Jeffries just reminds me of a phrase that
Yeah.
I never want to hear again, which is speaks for itself, right? That's what the
Oh my
Democrats love
God.
to. It speaks for itself. No, it precisely does
Really,
not.
really.
And you are supposed to be our voice. That's what we elected you to do. Um,
Oh
it's
my God.
But what do you think about the midterms? What is your current state of?
I mean, I'm up and down, and because I feel very much like my gut says that we're going to have a massive win,
Yeah.
but I can't tell if that's my gut or if
Mm-hmm.
that's just like my
Copium.
way of co yeah, my copium. I mean, it's obvious
We
that they are
should.
going to they are
Mhm.
going to try to do whatever they can, but think that one of the things that Jamel Bowie said in this. Did you see the one that he put out this morning? I think I shared it on my Instagram stories. And he goes through the whole thing again of like what they can and can't do to affect elections, blah blah. But one of the things he mentions is like at the end, sign up to be a poll worker. Like this is the most important thing you can do is to get involved in the structure of elections. And
Yeah.
I think and then the final thing he says, which I was very convinced by, is he said, the more that they interfere like this, the more Americans have already shown that they will react with defiance and not compliance. And I do think that that's what Minnesota shows is that they're actually, when it comes to institutions, it's been complete compliance in Trump 2.0. When it comes to the people, it's been defiance. And I think that the elections are of the people. They're of the people. So I see them as, and I mean, this special election last night in New Jersey. I mean, that was incredible. I mean, this is, that this very far left, underfunded candidate, whether or not APAC may be helped by attacking the front runner or whatever, who cares? Like this also is a sign whether or not APAC caused this because of their stupid funding decisions or their stupid attacks for what their goal was.
Mm-hmm.
It also shows that our enemies within the Democratic Party, the centrists and the money people and whatever, that they're scrambling. They are chickens with their heads cut off, running around. They think the old tricks are going to work, and the old tricks are not working. People, they're like, he's not, he's not good on ice, thinking that, this was. I don't even understand really what the logic of their
Yeah.
attacks was,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't help their person at all.
Yeah.
And so, and I also think like another thing about that primary, because as you know, I was very, very depressed earlier this week thinking, oh, when I was looking at those, like the numbers in Illinois and different, like looking at different races and just thinking, oh, we're going to end up with these terrible Democrats in office and we're just going to be completely fucked. And, and one of the things that they said was that part of what made her win possible is that there used to be a way in which the party could choose in New Jersey to put someone on the line. I can't remember what they call it, but it's like they have their own line and it doesn't have to go through an open primary to put them there. And
Mm-hmm.
that really, really helped the Democratic machine in New Jersey. So and the person that really broke the back of that was Andy Kim. And
Yes, I did see
and I
that.
think I think that it shows that roots that were planted uh,
Uh-huh.
in the first Trump regime, in the, Black Lives Matter, like all of these like social movements that have been building,
Yes.
like it's not gone. Things are
Yes,
still
that is
flowering.
very
Things are
such an
still
important
playing out,
point. Such an
you
important
know?
point. It's not just they had their project 2025, fine. We all that's just those that's just words on paper, and it's more than that now since they have power. But we also sowed some seeds. We also laid down
Yes.
some track, and I
Yeah.
think that's a really, really important point. We should not lose sight of that. And become a poll worker. Get involved.
Yes.
Get
Get
on the ground.
involved.
All right. I think that's a good, hopeful,
Okay.
hopeful
Okay.
place to leave it.
Stop.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Wishing us a
Are
better
we?
week. Yeah, let's.
Yes.
All
Stop
right.
recording.